Sebastian Vettel shocked the world when he announced his retirement from the sport last year, but that seems to be changing very soon for the joy of all the F1 fans out there. While there are still some strong signs to come about Vettel's return to the sport, his constant engagement with different teams, especially Audi, has hinted about a return to the sport from 2026 onwards, a path that his childhood hero, Michael Schumacher, once took when he came out of retirement for Mercedes. Considering their German heritage, it would be a no-brainer decision for Vettel, and all the cards add up. So, is this the foreseeable future for the four-time world champion? Sebastian Vettel left the sport at probably one of the worst moments imaginable for him, right when Aston Martin started to perform better, and one of the main reasons why he decided to step back was the lack of competitiveness that the team provided to him. Even though he did believe in their project in 2021, it didn't seem to be fruitful until 2023, when his old friend Fernando Alonso started to win podiums and fight for decent positions amid all of the domination from Red Bull. Be that as it may, it doesn't mean that Vettel is done with the sport. Quite the contrary, his experience is so vast that he was even related to replacing Binotto as the team principal at Ferrari, the team that he opted for in 2015. But after that plan fell through, many believe that he would be the perfect replacement for Helmut Marko at Red Bull when it comes to recruiting talent for the Austrian team. And it seems like none of this makes enough sense for the four-time world champion, as he has his eyes set on the bigger prize, returning to an F1 seat as a full-time driver. Not that if he decides to return tomorrow, the interest in him wouldn't be through the roof, but at this point in his career, it's safe to say that he's recharging his batteries and is calmly but surely thinking about returning at some point in his career. This has been hinted at by Vettel himself, who's never denied the chance that we haven't seen the last of him just yet, and that if the perfect opportunity arrives ringing at his doorbell, then he'd be up for grabbing it. When talking about this matter, Vettel said, "We'll see, but I have some ideas. I've been to Monaco earlier this year. I had a very good meeting with Stefano Domenicali. Other than obviously the cars directly polluting, F1 has a huge responsibility because it's a very big event." Well, if you're a huge fan of Vettel, then you know the values that he stood for while he was an active driver, and he did continue to stand for them in his post-F1 life as well. One of the biggest issues that he had with the sport was the massive expansion, as he wasn't a huge fan of the F1 circus polluting the world to this extent, which is why his ambassadorial role in F1 is of enormous importance for the team. Vettel has also spoken about the interest that he's been receiving from a lot of teams to bring himself back to the grid, but right now he's focused on the married life and getting to spend some quality time with his wife and kids. However, if you were to ask Fernando Alonso, Kimi Raikkonen, Michael Schumacher or NICO Hulkenberg, the retirement life of an F1 driver gets boring very quickly, which is why all of them were so eager to complete a comeback, and may I say, all of them did it on such a terrific and successful manner. But there is one comeback from these stories that would suit Vettel's situation the best, the one from his hero, Michael Schumacher. Back when Michael retired from the sport in 2006, nobody expected him to return. But when Mercedes announced they were entering the sport from 2010 on, Michael signed a deal with the German team in order to bring his expertise and make them one of the greatest teams that had ever participated in the sport. This took him 3 years, along with Nico Rosberg, so when Lewis Hamilton joined from the 2014 season onwards, it was a full-blown domination, winning 8 consecutive Constructors and 7 consecutive Drivers' Championships, only interrupted by Verstappen's run in 2021. Audi's goal is to compete for championships in a 3-year span once they enter the sport, and if they're to learn from the history of other teams, they would be smart to sign a driver who would have major experience and build the perfect car thanks to his knowledge. So at this point, I really need to ask you, do you know of any other better candidate for the seat other than Sebastian Vettel? According to Blick, a Swiss newspaper that is very close with F1, Andreas Seidl, the newly appointed CEO of Sauber, has already made up his mind when it comes to who'll be driving for Audi in their debut season in 2026, and one of the drivers is definitely Sebastian Vettel. It seems like Andreas knows what it takes to enter the sport with a brand new squad that has no real experience in the sport, something that has struggled a lot with and still does to this day. And being competitive from day one is definitely not a realistic scenario for Audi, a risk that they knew they were taking once they entered the sport. However, that didn't deter them from their real goal of competing for championships 3 years from now. And even though Vettel has stated that he has no interest in returning to the sport as of now, don't forget that this is basically 3 years from what we're talking about right now. For those of you who think that he would be too old and out of shape to get Audi where their destined goal would be, we have a reminder for you. He would still be younger than Alonso is right now when 2026 comes, as Vettel is only 36 years old at the moment of speaking. The stars are set for a massive comeback for the 4-time world champion. But the question remains, does Vettel have the willpower to invest his time in a team that won't likely fight for podium finishes and wins just because of the German side of the deal? He's been ruined, to say the least, by a project like this at Aston Martin, but seeing that he might have left a little bit too early is something that would definitely steer Vettel's ship towards a return in the sport, one that is finally poised to cement his status as the legend in the sport. What kind of a tectonic shakeup would this have for the grid? The current lineup of Bottas and Zhou is one that Alfa Romeo is very unlikely to keep, even though Bottas did announce his commitment to the new Audi project. However, with how close Carlos Sainz's father is to Audi, given the fact that he drives for the German manufacturer in the Rally Championship, there is a huge potential that we're going to see the combination of Vettel and Sainz in Audi from 2026 onwards. The deal makes a lot of sense for Audi, because not only will they receive one of the brightest minds in the sport to be their driver and to bring his expertise to the sport, but the marketing team would be more than grateful to have Vettel as the face of their team. The German ties will also help promote the brand from the outside as well. And with more investment, Audi will actually have a lot of financial freedom to bring everything that Vettel will be providing for them in terms of technical knowledge. The intentions of Audi are clear. Fight for championships 3 years from their entrance in the sport, and quite honestly, this is something that was predicted by Pat Simmons as well, who said that even though we have a major shakeup in 2026, it doesn't automatically mean that Red Bull will be dethroned, as he predicted 2 to 3 years until the competition finally catches up. By this time, nobody knows what can happen on and off the grid, but one thing is for sure, with a clear target in front of them, and with experienced drivers and engineers who will take on this voyage together, Audi is poised for great success. Now, one competition that Vettel will have for this place, if he does choose to return to the sport sooner rather than later, is going to be Fernando Alonso, because the 2-time world champion didn't hide his plans of continuing to drive in the sport from 2026 onwards, which would make him one of the oldest drivers to ever do so at the age of 45. Still, it's going to be a very interesting fight to witness for the Audi seat, and it seems like the Ingolstadt-based squad is going to have sweet headaches as to who would be putting them in a position to fight for the championship in 3 years' time from 2026 onwards. So after hearing all that, what do you think about the potential return of Vettel to Audi? Let us know in the comments down below.